Sure, so I worked for Oracle originally. I used to say for 5 years, from 87 to 92. I actually worked 2 years short of 5 years, as I'll explain in a moment. But after a 22-year absence, I decided to go back to Oracle. So on March 17th, I rejoined Oracle Corporation, working for Mike Hitchwa, who owns Apex, SQL Developer, lots of different technologies. And I rejoined Oracle to work on energizing and building the global PL SQL and SQL community. It's been great fun, it's really exciting. And what's really funny about the 5-year thing is that 2 weeks after I rejoined Oracle, I got this email saying, "Congratulations on your 5-year anniversary at Oracle Corporation." I left just short of my 5 years. And so, they added it on, it tripped over, and like, pick your gift from the catalog. That's a great way to come back to a company. So actually, ODTUG has long been my favorite conference. Putting aside Oracle Open World, it's just completely different. You can't really compare them, but ODTUG is fantastic, partly because of its name. It's a developer-focused conference, and I'm all about PL SQL development. So it's always been very popular for me, personally a favorite. The community service part, actually, this is the first year I've done it. And the reason for me, the motivation for me this time is that I am getting more and more focused on healing the planet. I think humans do a tremendous amount of damage to our world, and I'm finding it personally more and more objectionable. And so I go out every week in Chicago and for 10, 12 hours a week and cut down trees, which sounds weird, but I do that to rescue trees, to fight invasives. And when I saw that Kscope was organizing a community service day that was going to do just that here in the Seattle area, I was all over that. And I had a great time. We were out there for about 3 hours, cutting down Himalayan blackberries, which are these fierce, thorny plants.
You have the battle scars to prove it.
I do, and they're on Twitter and probably other places as well. But I can't think of a better reason to be temporarily injured than to help save trees. Well, first of all, I am not a data scientist. I actually consider myself an amateur programmer. I just got very lucky. So I've taken 3 computer classes in my entire career. Back at college, all of them 101 intro classes. And fortunately, when I started programming in '79, you could start from almost nothing and get into the business. Now I think very few people get jobs doing programming without being, having a degree in computer science at least. So, but I am not a scientist, I am not an engineer, I'm just good at hacking some code. Unfortunately, PL/SQL is powerful, but simple enough to allow me to succeed. In terms of that post, it actually came out of my website, the PL SQL Challenge, which is a website for people to take quizzes on PL SQL, SQL, database design, and logic. And it's part of my effort to complement the things that I do around what I would call passive learning. So writing books, writing blogs, tweets that are all about you reading and passively intaking knowledge.
Sure.
And I think that's great. Obviously, I'm really glad people have bought my books. But I think we have to be actively engaged with the knowledge to really internalize it. The most important activity is writing code. But secondly, to be able to take quizzes, to challenge your knowledge, to test your knowledge, and compete with others, which a lot of people like to do. So that's what the PL SQL Challenge was about. And we have something called the roundtable discussion, a monthly discussion that we allow people to just go on about. And the roundtable discussion that month was, which are the most critical languages that you want to learn?
Sure.
If PL SQL isn't enough, what else do you want to learn? And what I said is, well, the language that I'm learning these days is DNA. And I talked about, what I consider to be the compelling, irrefutable evidence of evolution. So I've been actually the last couple of years learning and studying a lot about evolution. And obviously it's this big issue in the United States, and I won't get into the whole conflict there. I think if you look at data, if you're a data scientist, if you're a rational human being, then you can see that the evidence we have amassed in the world shows that evolution is happening. Anyway, so that's why I mentioned it. And in fact, I don't know if you folks spend a lot of time reading about DNA and genetics and genomes, but it looks like humans have actually been able to get down below the surface of the world around us sufficiently to get to the programming language. You literally are at the moment now where scientists are tweaking individual bits of DNA and seeing what they can do. And frankly, I want them to stop. This is bad news. We clearly don't have the maturity as a species to have this kind of control. And it did result in this enormous discussion on my blog because one of the people at the PL SQL Challenge said, "Irrefutable? That's ridiculous. It's refutable." And I said, well, go ahead and refute me on my blog.
But aside from human life, other things evolve, such as you were saying, the programming languages themselves and our entire ecosystem.
Right, and our world, the world of PL SQL developers, the world really of Oracle, core Oracle database technology has been changing, but what's really been changing is the world around us. So humans have gone through this massive shift in the way that we live in the world, and frankly, I think generally not for the better. I think humans would be better off not being surrounded by and ingesting data from screens, and instead going out in the world and living in the world. But putting that aside for a moment, so there's been a big shift around big data. So now devices can collect all this data, which gives humans the opportunity to do something with the data. And then companies like Google and Facebook realized, holy cow, it's hard to use the relational model, or at least the traditional Oracle database and SQL Server technologies, to manage that amount of data. So they launched this new initiative, NoSQL. And I think now reflecting back on it, I really feel like here it is, 2014, 2010, et cetera, and suddenly Oracle, because Oracle is the synonym for SQL essentially in relational technology, was under an onslaught. There was this widespread sort of faddish rejection of our technology of SQL and relational database. And it's true that it couldn't work in some specific niches of use cases, but of course in the vast majority of use cases of manipulating data, it's still incredibly powerful. And I feel like we kind of dropped the ball, we being all of us, ODTUG, SQL, Oracle, myself, to not stand up and say, okay, SQL isn't great for everything, but you don't throw it away. You don't generally say SQL is no good anymore. Because SQL, I don't know how much we've thought about this, but SQL and Oracle specifically are key enabling technologies for not only the information era, but the internet era. Nothing happens without Oracle and without SQL these days. So people can say, oh, that's old technology. And it is old technology, except that we've kept it very fresh, very powerful. And without SQL and without Oracle, lots of things stop. And what's really interesting, one more comment about that. So Google really led the revolution around NoSQL and Hadoop and all the MapReduce and et cetera. And pretty recently, they published a paper saying, you know what? This stuff's really powerful, but it's really hard to build applications on Hadoop. We need some sort of language to manipulate the data and query the data. So now there's new SQL. And so it's circling back. And the bottom line is that SQL is still the most incredible language, the most powerful language for manipulating data. And we need to get out there and remind people and talk about the power of SQL as a set-oriented language. And that's a challenge because, of course, there's object-oriented, there's procedural. Set orientation is not something that people are learning about and thinking about and using. And I think it's really time for Oracle to go back to the basics. Not the basics of here's a select statement, here's a union, but literally, what does set-oriented thinking do? We need to think about how do we train people on how to think this way. And then we need to make sure that people understand all the amazing functionality that has been going into SQL for the last 5, 10, 20 years.
Why use PL SQL?
To me, the issue is not which technology we should use, which silver bullet, which new silver bullet is going to do the job, or which old tarnished silver bullet is still doing the job. The question is, how do we be successful in our work? So our job is not to write some cool new software. Our job is to solve a problem. Every day we go to work and we're solving problems. And we do that through logic, which is this fundamental tool that humans developed, or at least use. Maybe all animals use rational, logical thinking. They just don't manifest their thinking
with thumbs.
In all the destructive ways that we do. Yeah. So we're solving problems. And so when you're solving a problem for your customers, you don't say, I don't want to use PLSQL because logic doesn't belong in the database. The question should be, how do I get the job done best? What is the right tool for the right job? And the job being all the different jobs that we need to do to solve the problem. Sure. So to me, the rational perspective to take is whether you're programming in PHP or Java or Python, if you want to work with the Oracle database, what's the best, fastest, easiest way to do that? And it's pretty clear that number one, you've got to learn and maximize the SQL language. If you use the Oracle database or SQL Server or any other database as simply a data store, write a row, read a row, update a row, then you lose a lot of the power of the expressive and performant nature of SQL. So you can't avoid SQL when you're using Oracle database, but you can minimize it. And that's the first mistake. People have to maximize the power of SQL. And the second thing then is, where do you put the business logic? Where do you put your rules? And to me, you bury it as deeply as you can in the stack so that you can access it in as many ways as possible. And the higher up the stack it goes, the more limited is the ability to access that content. Business rules are going to be used all over the place. And it's not necessarily going to be used just at the top of the stack. So you push it down to the place where everybody can get at it, and it can be protected, and it can be secure, and it can be built just once. and reuse throughout your entire application. So to me, the compelling, it's not even PL SQL versus Java. You could put your rules in Java, put them in the database. Fine, but put them where everybody can get at them, not where you're going to write it 3 different times. And then of course also, you're writing in Java today and then your manager says, oh, check out node.js. That is the coolest thing. We're going to switch to that. And then you're rewriting everything. And if it's in the database, you're not. You're just rewriting the access path to the same data. So if you like the idea of normalizing content, of normalizing your data, and not having repeated data all over the place, you should be normalizing your rules. You should be normalize everything. Never repeat anything in your code. So I think those are compelling reasons to push information down the stack. What technology you use is almost irrelevant, except that in the database you're looking at PLSQL, Java, and maybe some others as time goes by. But I'd say in many, many ways, because of the tight connection between PLSQL and SQL, you're going to get the best performance. You're going to be able to write it most simply in PLSQL.
The flip side of that, he would probably argue, is that by writing in PLSQL, you lose the ability to move from database to database.
Yeah, that's a great point, certainly. So there's always this issue of lock-in. We don't want to be locked into one vendor. And I think the important point there is to look at reality. It's always important to be reality-based, and to look at history. The chance that you're going to move your database technology from an Oracle to a MySQL to a DB2 to a whatever, compared to the chance that you're going to change anything higher in the stack, is very low. I mean, look at how long it takes for new customers, for Oracle customers, to move up to a new version of Oracle. Numbers of years go by. And I think the cynic would say, well, the reason that happens is we don't trust Oracle version 0. We don't trust Oracle version 1. We're going to wait for version .2. And there's something to be said for that, although Oracle does enormous amounts of testing and quality control on their software. But I think the real reason that people don't move quickly to upgrade to new versions of Oracle database is that it's just so critical to their business. They have to be so careful about doing anything with their database. So it's incredibly important core technology. They're not going to say tomorrow, oh yeah, we don't want Oracle database, we're going to DB2, no matter how easy DB2 might make it. And you can actually port your PL SQL code over to DB2 now and run it largely unchanged. The chance of it happening seems very small. So you can say these things. You can say we don't want to get locked into Oracle, and using PL SQL locks us in even further. But if you then challenge that statement and say, well, how often does that happen? How likely is that going to happen? Let's talk to a CIO and a CTO and say, all right, when's the last time you changed database compared to when's the last time you changed your programming language?
So for me, unit testing is a real pain. Why should I do it at all?
Why should you do it at all? Right, well, I think one attitude you can take about your code is, why should I test it? Our users will test it for us. I mean, we'll put it out there, they'll try it out, and if they have a problem, they'll let us know.
Exactly.
Now, we can laugh at that. We can say, oh, that's a funny thing to do, but that's actually the dominant paradigm of software, right? We release buggy software, people complain about it, and we fix it. Now, of course, we should, in advance, get rid of as many bugs as we can. But I think the bottom line also is that not only are our users of software acclimatized, they have come to accept that all software has bugs, but clearly it's okay. I mean, if you can't accept the same number of bugs in a piece of technology like the video camera that's recording me, or the car that we drive, as you do in software, because they simply won't work. Things have to work in the real world. In the virtual world, we control it. It's our space, for good and bad. And so that means that we have the ability to fix it fairly dynamically without a lot of cost associated with it. Not like GM recalling millions of cars. Extremely expensive on multiple levels. Oracle issuing a patch, it's a drag. It'd be nice if we didn't have to, but it's not the end of the world. You're not talking about disrupting lives or anyway. So I guess my point is that, so for years I pushed automated unit testing. I've built 2 different frameworks and tools to automate testing PL SQL code. And I think they're both important. UTPLSQL is the open source framework. Code Tester for Oracle from now Dell, a great tool. And SQL Developer has integrated unit testing as well. Use these tools. But you know what? I know we're not going to. I know that I don't use them nearly as much as I should. And I've decided I'm not going to spend my time pushing people to do things that they're pretty clearly not going to do, or maybe find a different way to edge them closer to doing it. So we should unit test. We should use test-driven development and think about testing first. But what I would say is to step back as a programmer. When you're about to start a new program, I think you should ask yourself a really simple question. How do I know when I'm done? So I'm going to start writing code, and at some point I'm going to say end, and I'm going to hand it off for production or QA, whatever, and I'm going to say it's done. And you have to have some way of telling yourself you're done. So forget about unit testing scripts and which tool to use. Take out a piece of paper and just write down a list. I'll be done with this program when it does this, and just list them out. And even just having a piece of paper that you tack up on the wall to remind you, a little checklist, will have a dramatic impact on the quality of your code. So you can do little things without getting caught up in, oh my God, I have to tell my manager to buy a new tool and we have to spend 6 months building our test scripts. That's not going to happen. That will never happen. So do little things. Do little checklists to remind you of the key things you need to get done, and you'll see a massive improvement just from that.
Analog can still work.
Analog's great. I love analog. I mean, I'm walking around with little pieces of paper in my pocket. I didn't use my phone, my smartphone for scheduling and this. I use it to make phone calls and look at pictures of my granddaughter.
We're ready for next year. Who's going to be with me? All right.
Announcing Kscope 2015 in Florida.